We were afraid to fail, though.
And my name is Brayden Varr. I'm a senior art director here, and I lead up our creative team. I've been with Dan for about 4 years, and I joined iProspect last year to build up our creative team. And I'm really excited to share that with some of the brands that we've been partnering with, we've already seen some really great results, and we're going to dive deep into how we achieve that in a little bit. But we saw a 32% reduction in CPC, 80% reduction in CPM. I almost said 80 cents, which might be huge, and 87% reduction in CPA. I'm not making any of these up, and then a 36% reduction in CPL. And this has been with, we've been able to achieve this with our new approach to creative.
So we love those numbers. I still get excited when I see them on the screen, but like Brayden said, we want to really unpack what it is that we developed. How do we get to those numbers for our clients? So in doing that, we have to first identify the challenges. So we'll walk you through some of the challenges that we've understood from partnering with all of you and our teams. Our solution, the method that we developed to make sure that we're able to drive business results with the creative that's in market. How we make it happen, what does that method look like? We'll give you some examples there, and then of course how we make sure it's working. Measurement, how are we really holding that creative accountable to the media, like you heard Brittany discuss yesterday on the main stage.
Now, what I really love about being at iProspect is how ruthless we are in this pursuit of performance. No button left unpressed, no lever left unpulled, no strategy untried. And it's so true. I see it all the time, but it gets to a point where there's only so much you can squeeze out of your strategy. And how do we get beyond that? We look at your creative. And if you remember yesterday from the main stage, Brittany and Noha talked about how when all else is created equal, creative is the most powerful optimization tool we have to work with. And this is something we live and breathe on the creative team, and really excited to share how we achieve that with all of you.
And it is a phrase that Brayden and I use with our teams, with our clients, but we also understand that it's one thing to know that creative is such a powerful tool. It's another thing entirely to really understand how to make sure that you're using that tool effectively. And so to do that, we had to really unpack those challenges that we talked about. And just to get the blood pumping and compete with our neighbors, what are some of the challenges that you all are being faced with when it comes to performance creative? It's a good gut check for me. It can be a therapy session too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with us, we have a really strong retail presence. We have 32 stores in Sally Beauty, and our creative team mirrors all of our digital assets off of in-store signage. So there's not that conversion first or optimizing for mobile mentality.
Yep. Very common.
And we don't have the resources currently in place to have a separate team for that.
Scale, volume, channel optimization, sure.
What
Anybody
else?
else? Get it all out. It's a safe space.
I'm with Google, and on YouTube at least, we see as we've introduced more performance-driven products to that world, is that the content doesn't really line up with a drive to action. So like it's a very editorial or beautiful or branded focused kind of creative, but it doesn't call any kind of action. And so the lineup of like what your creative is trying to do doesn't line up with what your goals are.
Yeah. So I think that both of these examples really will be summed up in how we've approached understanding the challenges. So these are both great examples. And because we love a good alliteration, right? 3 Ps. Process, so that scale, that volume we talked about, how do we make sure that we're accommodating, we can accommodate that volume. Alignment within your media and your creative teams is so important, and we know that that's really challenging. There's sometimes that friction there. Partners, platforms. We know that within, I can speak for Facebook specifically, the amount of new ad formats or targeting capabilities is constantly changing and evolving. How are we keeping up with that? I know we heard best practices use as sort of a dirty word by Lou, but it's something we have to be cognizant of, right? Like if 16:9 aspect ratios are driving less performance than 1:1, we have to know those things and be able to make the right recommendations, and staying on top of that is a challenge. And then lastly, performance. Optimizing that creative, like you mentioned for Sally, making sure that we're really being able to measure the performance that those pieces of creative are driving within each channel is so key. And so in taking a step back and saying, okay, we understand these challenges, what solution do we need to create? how do we approach it? We approach it through the same lens with which we do everything else we do. Jeremy talked about it yesterday. It's that performance lens. That is really what's going to be able to drive an approach to creative that will scale and drive your business performance forward.
Now, when thinking about how to set up a performance creative team, we wanted to step away from that traditional model that we might be so used to and really think about what our framework is for approaching creative with performance. And we call it crafted to perform. And this is how we approach each and every creative project we work on, whether it's a paid social campaign, a display campaign, a YouTube content series, or an on-site experience. Each of these we approach with these 3 steps. First, we look at concept. So concept, as we heard yesterday, that's that big idea, that story that creatives like me really, really love. And we found, believe it or not, that the better stories you tell, the bigger ideas you put together, the better things perform. And that what I'm really trying to get at here is that performance creative shouldn't be boring. It should be exciting. It should drive interest. It should drive engagement. And we do this by taking a look at audits and partnering with the media teams on strategy. Then we move into craft. So craft is what you see in the ad. It's that art in that copy. It's that motion. It's that production quality. It's your user experience. And we have focused on a rigid set of principles that help us stay really, really efficient so you get really quick turnaround times with high quality creative.
And we talked about the change and the speed of change in the digital landscape. Channel is integral to being a part of this not linear but circular process and method that we have really used in our approach to creative. So you see some of the channels that we activate creative production within right now, but I think really key here is understanding that literally being able to sit next to Brayden's team, to be on speed dial with him, whether he likes it or not, and be able to have that seamless back and forth education. Him to the channel team is about the creative space, and us with the creative team about the nuances in each of our channels is so incredibly key in making sure that we have that channel nuance woven throughout each part of the creative process and not looked at sort of retroactively or retrospectively when the creative is ready to go into market.
Now, when you put these 3 steps together, this is your creative. It's equal parts concept, it's equal parts craft, and it's equal part channel. And each of these need to be looked at with performance in mind to drive as much performance as possible.
And so we think about concept, and of course we can come into this circular model at any stage, but when we think about concept and strategy and audits, one client we were really excited to collaborate with and partner with in this capacity was Marcus. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with Goldman Sachs. If you're not familiar with Marcus, it's the digital focused arm that really looks at driving those online loans and savings accounts for their clients. And we've been running media for some time for them and really felt that we had the right amount of that rigor and granularity in our social structure, but we knew that there was still more performance that we could be getting out of their media, and we really felt strongly it lied in their creative. And so we did an informal creative audit and really took stock of everything that they had in market and said, motion, we need motion here. So our recommendation didn't just boil down to motion, it was really adding the right kind of motion, the right emphasis to the right elements within their assets. And we rooted that recommendation in that channel rationale. We say we know that for our current clients, we're seeing CPA decreases of double-digit percentages when we add motion to these static-only campaigns. And then that advice, the 4 iterations you see on the right, that's where we bring Brayden's team in and say, how do we bring all of this rationale, these recommendations to life? And you'll see some examples of how we emphasized and really created that thumb-stopping motion Brayden mentioned earlier to make their message pop within the social feed. So not only did they start leveraging motion in their assets and saw an uptick in performance, and that's great, we were able to really use this as a conversation piece in all of their campaigns going forward and be able to harken back to it and make those recommendations really live throughout the rest of their media.
We also partnered with Culligan to help them with some of their creative, and Culligan offers a wide variety of water solutions for in business or in home. mostly focusing on water softeners and water filtration systems. Now, Culligan's campaign strategy is pretty familiar to, I'm sure, most of you in the room, where you see an ad, you go to their website, you learn about their product, and you fill out a form. Now, we thought there was a real opportunity to shorten that journey, bring people closer to that form, and we partnered with the paid social team to bring the lead form into the Facebook feed so you didn't have to leave that experience and keep on scrolling. Now, in order to make that happen and to drive as much leads as possible, Culligan needed creative to get people to care about water softeners in their home. And what we did was we put together 2 different creative concepts that made you think about water in ways that you might not think about. So first and foremost, how hard water might affect your day, or how hard water can be really terrible, like waking up early, like us this morning.
I thought about hard water immediately, yeah.
And just inviting people to find out what's affecting your water and making you think about it in ways that you might not have thought about before. Or putting together stories about the different things in your home that water can make better, like your pasta, your showers, even your drinks. We're really happy to share that with this campaign that we put together, by shortening that path to lead forms, we saw, in comparison to other performance channels, 27% increase in conversions and a 22% lower cost per contact. We've also been fortunate to do a lot of work with Vantage. So Vantage is a business communications provider. They offer a wide variety of solutions for large businesses, medium businesses, and small businesses that solve really complex and real problems. However, we wanted to position Vantage in a way that made things look easier and provide a real solution. So just quick survey. How many of you in this room have a job? And leave your hands up if you want your job to be harder. Okay, so we're 100% so far today. That's great. So what we did was we started positioning Vantage's creative to be the best parts about Vantage. Number 1, how it makes your life easier. And it doesn't make anything harder. It's not complicated. It's focusing on that primary benefit. Like, how many times have you all been asked for way more with less budget, right? So a real solution and a real problem. We don't get into the nitty gritty. We stay high level, and we just have a conversation about it. Or how many of us have called into a contact center and got a totally different story? Instead of driving into all the different features and the different integrations, we focus high level and communicate that real problem that Vantage is solving for. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be surprised to hear that the more creative we got, the more performance we saw. And even if we got a little bit silly, like how Vantage puts you in control of different things you might not normally be in control of. Like, you can't control kids, but you can control your spending. Or you can't change weather, but you can change your phone service. Or when it came time to actually leading to conversions and getting checkouts, you can't sample milk, but you can sample Vantage. And we had a lot of fun with this, and Vantage is always letting us kind of be experimental and just tell really great, funny stories and not feel like the typical B2B that you might have been looking for. Now, we also put together some campaigns that talk about how Vantage helps you with your personal life and problems. So how many of us have had to stay home for whatever reason? Maybe you had a leak in your ceiling or something like that. Vantage helps you stay connected. And instead of getting back into those different solutions that they provide, again, sticking really high level and telling a story, inviting people to participate, and you just get it when you look at it. Now, any good sign of a good idea is how you can scale it. How many different ways can you tell that story? How personalized can you get it? And we were able to personalize the story in many different ways. Like, maybe you have a furry friend, or you live in Boston and you get snow, or you have the classic car trouble, or you have a kid who may or may not actually be sick. And I'm really excited to share that with this campaign, we actually saw a 2 times greater click-through rate than average Vantage campaign, which is huge if you think about how much media they're running and how many different campaigns we have in market. And since this performed so well, we took a risk and we made a pivot from what we normally do, and we tried an outdoor pilot. So we ran Vantage's first outdoor campaign in about a decade. When we ran it in test markets, and we were able to track performance, where we saw a 6% increase in homepage visits, which is really huge for Vantage, where brand awareness is always an important metric for them, and we're able to drive that in ways that you might not have thought. And then we took this campaign to even greater heights, like outdoor and up in the sky, and just telling stories, being engaging with our creative, and because of that, we were able to see with our creative concepts that simplify complex business needs or services, and 195% increase in click-through rate across the board with all the campaigns we've been running with Vantage.
And I love the sampling milk. I think about that every time I'm in the grocery store now, and you will too. Just wait.
Try it. Let me know how it goes.
Didn't hear that from us. But we know that while these are really exciting examples, hopefully for you guys too, and Brayden, cover yours. If we can't measure it, if we can't really identify how we're holding that creative accountable, it's all for naught, right? And how do we do that? How do we hold creative accountable? How does it really work? You'll hear the group next door talk about it in terms of influencer. When we think about our creative capabilities, we really approach measurement the same way we approach it for our channels, right? And that is through a framework that's grounded in a very rigorous and granular approach to testing and optimization. And at the forefront of that is first working with our clients, identifying what those brand metrics are that you're trying to drive. What are you all being held accountable to? What conversations are happening internally that you have to really make sure that you're proving success out within your creative strategy? And then that helps us align on what KPIs we should be held accountable to. What should we be looking at driving within that creative? And of course, measurement solutions, reporting solutions. So you heard Noha use the example on the main stage yesterday about brand lift. So do we need to bring in a Millward Brown and really make sure that we're assessing the right data, all of the data? We get all that information together, and then we say, okay, what is our innovation agenda? What is our learning agenda? Hopefully that's something that's not new to any of you in the room who have worked with your channel teams. If it is, find me after, we'll fix it. But what a learning agenda really is a list of questions, hypothesis, and results. The question, of course, what is it that you're looking to understand about creative? Is it how your audiences are engaging with it? Is it how it's performing within different ad formats, platforms? The questions can be broad, they can be very narrow. And then, of course, the hypothesis, using that channel expertise, the creative expertise, and saying this is what we anticipated driving. We use our benchmarks and really make an informed and educated decision about how we choose what goes to market and what tests we do. And then measurement, of course, reporting on results. So we brought this to life through one of those line items from a sample learning agenda for Marcus. We talked about Marcus earlier. So not only do we want to think about motion in their assets, but we also know that lifestyle imagery, that sentiment messaging drives much higher impact when it comes to your media. So how does lifestyle imagery and sentiment messaging actually impact performance? It can be a broad question like that. The hypothesis there, knowing what we see within the space, this will outperform generic one-size-fits-all content in our machine optimized and our lookalike audiences. Some examples to the right, of course, on the bottom, that sentiment messaging we're talking about, that empowerment to reward yourself, highlighting that 1.5 so that it doesn't get lost in that text, the heavier text that you see above it. And then, of course, the results. So these are just example results. We didn't actually run this test, but I think key here is not just that you're going to get results for each of these tests or questions that we're answering. It's really how are we using those results within our media teams, within our creative teams to drive better creative, to optimize our creative more effectively, more efficiently, to make sure that your business is being impacted by that creative.
Now, we covered a lot today, so just wanted to pull out some key takeaways. So first and foremost, I'm just going to repeat it one more time. When all else is created equal, creative is the most powerful optimization lever we have to work with. But how do we achieve that with creative is what we do is we look at each part of an ad, and they should be looked at with the same amount of tension and a care and through that lens of performance.
And then, of course, every piece of creative should be, say it with me, should be held just as accountable as the media. And we do that in making sure that every part of that method we walked you through, if you go to the next one, is really inspired and infused with that deep channel specialization. And then lastly, ensuring that we're identifying those key KPIs to hold that creative accountable is really key.
But the biggest thing is when it comes to creative at iProspect, performance is what we achieve, creativity is how we do it. Thank you.